Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude at Beyond Mystic, and welcome to today's Beyond Crypto Roundtable. With us, of course, is the lovely and talented Lisa. You can find her at Litecoin Lisa on YouTube and also here on our Patreon. Lisa, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Thanks. Oh, I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on. I see you're sporting a Matador blanket. Yeah, it's nice. I love it. Guys, also join me in welcoming Mr. Bix Weir. Um, sorry, you can find him on Road to Ruta here on YouTube. I was going to say something and I just had a brain fart there.
Yeah,
and also here, of course, on roadtoruta.com. Bix, welcome back to the show. How are you, man?
I'm great. I'm very happy to be here. Excited.
Have you noticed in the last couple of days, I don't know if it's the sun flares or it's kind of like you start a sentence and you get like, huh, and then start over again. Have you noticed that? Is that a Mercury retrograde or just, I don't know.
It's called retrograding into old age, JC. It's 50 and it's downhill, my friend.
It's also HARP. And I
hard.
did send you some links for that.
And they're spraying us and they're doing everything. How we survive this, we're going to, look back at our lives and say, holy moly, how did I run that gauntlet?
How did I indeed? Guys, we are triple casting on YouTube, Twitter, and also Rumble. So let's try to keep it clean and we'll try to leave this video on YouTube here today. You know how things
As he
go.
puts me up, Lisa, don't say the words.
Oh, they kicked off right there. Like Lisa.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today. We wanted to do a special crypto roundtable. We haven't done these in quite a while, and last week there's quite a bit of news items hitting the wire, so to speak, that could suggest that things are about to change and perhaps change very quickly. So I wanted to have Lisa and Bix join me. Maybe Joe will join us later into the show. I did send him the link, so he might come in for a little segment here, but we wanted to have a conversation with you guys and also give you the opportunity to ask some questions. I noticed in the last couple of months, specifically on the Rumble channel that's growing here, we have a lot of new people to this field of information. And so they have a lot of questions about wallets, which cryptos to invest in, what the hell it all means, why the dollar is dying, all these things. So if you guys have those questions, maybe in the second half of the show, please put them in high caps and I'll try to bring it up on the screen for you guys and go through them one by one. We're all trying to better navigate this crazy world. So before we start, Lisa, how are you doing? What's new with you? And what's new and exciting at Litecoin Lisa on YouTube there?
Well, we're just, we added a new show to our Monday experience, I guess. So pretty much I do a show weekly or daily during the weekday and around, well, we're actually moving in a little bit later, but we're changing times a little bit. But today we had I Am on talking about agorist. What is an agorist and why agorism? And that was really interesting. I think people are looking for solutions right now. We understand the system doesn't work. And I think it was in Cliff High's data that people are looking to grab onto something as the old system collapses and they look for new pathways. And so I want to be a part of the solution and felt like this might be something that was great to share with the community.
So Lisa, you're spearing the trail here in the make away civilization. That's one of the terms that was being used there. So fascinating, guys. Go check it out on YouTube.
I have been called the Queen of Hopium.
Okay. Well, it's always good to have some hope, but also some pragmatism. Biggs, what's new with you and what's exciting here on Road to Ruta on YouTube?
Mostly I'm fighting the silver battle. We are so close to victory. Mm-hmm. Victory meaning the end of the COMEX, basically. The price of silver will never be freely traded with the COMEX open. So lots of interesting stuff. Regulators coming out and say, we have to figure out a way to wind up the exchanges. As clearinghouses. It's like, holy crap, that's what $2 quadrillion in derivatives they're going to try to wind up,
right?
So that it doesn't cause a ripple in these crazy rigged systems. So we're getting close. And silver, I'm keeping an eye on India and the massive amount of silver being used in solar. For everybody in America who's listening, no, solar is not going away at all. As a matter of fact, the United States just announced they are going to double the amount of solar installations again this year. China's doing it already, and the only thing left to do about it, according to the Silver Institute, is lie about it. So that's what I'm doing every day.
There's a bunch of lying, but at the same time, there is some truth coming out. I don't know if you guys saw the CNN interview with Joe Biden just a couple of days. There were some cold, hard facts being thrown at him, perhaps for the first time in almost 4 years here. I'll play that clip in a second. And I also wanted to have your take on this Jared Bernstein explaining economic policy to Americans, which is like, wow, talk about the blind leading the blind. But these are the folks in charge, guys. Echoing what Biggs just said here too, I'm going to have Bill Holter on May 14th, so tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. He sent me an article he wrote for BillHolter.com this weekend. And he's suggesting also, he shared with me a couple of graphics here and some of his thoughts on why perhaps the next 2 weeks are very critical here and could spell big, big, big changes in the metals complex. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Okay, let's get into some of those crazy news items I was talking about this week. You remember the good old Jamie Dimon here, who was, of course, against Bitcoin and Bitcoin's a fraud, and I'll fire anybody who buys Bitcoin at JP Morgan. Well, lo and behold, they're a big part of this Bitcoin ETF. A lot of these banks were reporting this week. And on top of that, too, there seems to be more and more coming out, not conspiracy theory anymore, that these credit card companies, MasterCard, JP Morgan, Visa, Citibank, and others are testing shared ledger technology for tokenized asset settlements. This is from Bloomberg, of course. So no longer conspiracy theory, but conspiracy fact. I just thought that this was interesting. All of these banks are finally filing here with the FCC and admitting that they were buying a spot Bitcoin ETF. So that's JP Morgan. We had PNC Paribas in France, Wells Fargo also, UBS, and quite a few more. This one here too, I just saw earlier today. What do you think is happening? Let me start with you, Lisa. Are they finally, kind of like in 2008, you know how they were extricating themselves from mortgage-backed securities before they repriced them to market? Is that what we're seeing here now? Somebody was dumping the dollars and the bonds to eventually get into some of these Bitcoin ETFs, and now this announcement suggests that things are going to be repriced in a big way on the downside, perhaps for the bonds and the dollar, and on the upside for cryptos. Is this kind of like that starter pistol? Lisa, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't know that you want my thoughts on this.
Well,
It's a
I'm talking
little
to you, Lisa.
it's a little wooish,
Okay.
but I just think this is the way out. How do you get out of the debt that the United States is in? Well, you inflate the dollar away so that your debt is worth nothing and you pay it off in gold and silver. And I believe that these big banksters are going to be taken down in the process. And so that transition of power, the transition of property, they're going to all be left holding the bag, as they say. I do think Bitcoin's being hijacked. I'm not saying that it's bad to own Bitcoin in your own possession, to be able to trade peer to peer, but with those ETFs, that is a derivative of Bitcoin. That is fake Bitcoin. And that will have an effect on the price of real Bitcoin, as we saw what they did and have done with silver and gold all these years. But I would love to know what Bix's thoughts are.
Okay. So you're thinking maybe part of it is a starter pistol into this new world. But before we get that, you're thinking maybe these ETFs could be used for maybe one last pump and dump, grabbing all the
Well, the
assets?
dollar has to die under Biden, and we
Right.
don't have much longer with that nightmare, thank God.
Right.
But that is part of, I believe, the good guys' plan is to free us from all this debt of this dirty fiat system. And so I just see that as happening. I think Uncle Cliff's data talks about the bank failures next month.
Yeah.
And so I think we're all ready for that and understand. And those that aren't, the majority of America, and even I saw an article talking about many small businesses are now overextended in credit cards. And you're seeing credit cards pull back spending limits and all that because they know it's coming and they're going to be left holding that bag. And the bail-ins will come with it and all of that. But when it's worth nothing, you lost nothing.
Right.
So
we're seeing that here in Canada too. This one here, though, was posted on Zero Hedge. Average credit card debt in the U.S. is now soaring past $6.5, I believe, $1 trillion here, or $6,500 here per card. Now, that's interesting you mentioned that because the thing about the banks dying next month or starting to die, we've seen a few of them buckle already. Just last week, again, one was bailed out by the FDIC. But in Cliff's Web data suggesting that maybe by next spring, the Federal Reserve itself would cease to operate. So a lot of things need to happen before we get to that point. So we'll get to that a little bit later on. But Bix, your thoughts on these announcements here of these investments into Bitcoin ETF, the spot, and whether or not it's a starter pistol here to suggest that we're about to change gears in a big way, at least in a public point of view, Bix.
It's a total and complete crock of shit. It is absolutely 100% the banks buying silver or Bitcoin derivatives to destroy the price of Bitcoin. And we've seen it since they opened these ETFs. All the Bitcoiner people are scratching their head. How is this possible?
Right.
I mean, what's going to happen when the banks go down? They're going to sell all their assets that are readily sellable. What are readily sellable? All their Bitcoin ETFs that they're buying. They're just buying the derivative of it. Jamie Dimon, the criminal, is the custodian of it. He's rehypothecating Bitcoin. The exchanges have rehypothecated Bitcoin. It's going to get so ugly when they take down like Tether and the crypto cabal and all that. You got to just sit on your hands, wait for this shit to go. And then, I mean, you think about the banks are going to be dumping all the gold they've been buying recently. They're required by law to dump the gold before they go bankrupt. So the price of gold is going to dump. Not many people have silver, so I don't know what's going to happen with that. But silver's not traded on any exchanges other than in China and in India. They just started an exchange.
Right.
But the whole thing's a joke. The whole thing is a manipulated joke. Is just another tool to rig the price of cryptos. You know, I've seen it with Mt. Gox. I've seen it with FTX. They do the same bullshit. They take derivatives of the real asset. Bitcoin is a real standalone asset. The beauty of Bitcoin is it's nobody's debt. It's nobody's third-party risk. And you throw it in an ETF, all of a sudden it's everybody's debt. It's everybody's third-party risk. So the whole thing was a joke. I was screaming it since day one, and now we're here. You want?
I remember the last time you and I were on this. We were looking at it, maybe almost a year ago, as they were planning this, and we were saying, well, on one hand, it's good because we might see more institutional money coming to crypto, more mass adoption because of that. But on the other hand, we would have all this huge opportunity for the criminal people to basically rig the markets. And I suggest I'm hearing that's what you're suggesting we're at now. So if that is the case, what do Bitcoin holders do right now? Do they get out of the market for a while? Do they take profits for a while?
Buy real Bitcoin. Get it in your own possession, because that's all. Only thing you're going to have at the other end of this is the real assets you have in your own possession. You're not going to have Bitcoin ETFs. You're not going to have silver ETFs. You're not going to have stocks or bonds or anything else.
No, I understand that, but I don't even think that most of our viewers have any ETFs. They're exposed to actual Bitcoin. But my point is, if they're going to use the ETF to crash the value of Bitcoin, is there a play there? Is there something to do, or you just hold and stand pat and watch all of this collapse? What would you tell them?
The only thing you can do is stand and wait. I mean, Snippy's trying to buy back in after the crash, but there won't be any exchanges open. The banks go, there's no exchanges open. Right. So I mean, the whole concept of can you time it? Can you time the crash? And then I'm going to buy everything up with what? With fiat money that's not worth anything either.
I mean, and Reggie warned that Wells Fargo has the patent for the exchange. For an exchange, a exchange. How did he word it? I can't remember how he worded it. But Reggie was warning. Well, he's been warning, but he posted on Twitter January of this year, showing Wells Fargo's patent for exchange. And so people don't understand, like, when it goes, it all goes. And yeah, like Bix is saying, there won't be an opportunity for exchange.
Wow. Now, are you of the same view you were a couple of years ago in terms of the hope of using crypto to transverse this financial transition we're facing? Or are you more leaning towards now, for a period of time at least, maybe putting your assets in physical gold and silver? Like, where are you mentally on that thought process?
I don't know that there is a right answer. I think this is where everyone has to be personally responsible for your health, your wealth, your financial situation, and your personal safety. Like, this is where we all have to grow up and make
Yeah.
decisions for ourselves and stop being victims of the system or asking a third party to take care of us, or, oh, Bix told me, so now I'm going to be mad at him.
Right.
We all have to be big boys and big girls and make a decision. And everyone's in a different situation for your
Mhm.
family. And so you really have to look at what that is. But I would hope that people would be diversified. Uncle Cliff talks about that there will be a time, if the power grid were to go down, if that's how the cyber attack or whatever's going to happen, and we can guess all day long about
Right.
that, but what the event would be. But there will be a period of time where paper, dirty fiat is a great way to transact. There will be a time where I think we're going to do a lot of bartering. There
Right.
will be a time when it's really important to have gold and silver, constitutional money, in your possession. And that, typically that has stood over time when there have been these crises. That is the thing that, like Andy says, preserves wealth. It's not about, when number go up. And that's what's really broken with the system, is that instead of looking at the utility, and that's why I think when for crypto to really have its moon, if people want to call it that, or its adoption, it will be so painful to transact any other way that the pain will cause the utility or use case of crypto to come to the forefront and be that bridge to freedom for so many people.
Mhm. Oh, I'm with you on that, and I have to say, like, me personally too, I was excited, maybe cautiously optimistic. Bix and I were talking about this in New Mexico a number of years ago, and I remember an interview that Bix and Cliff High had with Jim Sinclair about crypto at the time. And Jim was of the opinion, hey, if it's man-made, it could be hacked. And we were new and excited about crypto, and we didn't see all the things that we see now today, including these ETFs and all these shenanigans that's being played into the crypto market. So let me ask you that same question now here, Bix, too. Maybe 5 or 10 years later, where are you on that process of navigating this financial transition? Are you still more heavy crypto, more gold and silver, half and half? Like, what would you say to the people who are looking at this as, okay, what are my exit strategies? And as Andy Scheckman said on my show the other day, and quite many times, he said, where else are you putting your money, JC? Like, at a certain point, we're limited here to try to preserve wealth, as Lisa just said. So what are your thoughts on that, Bix?
Well, I look at it. I've always tried to go 50-50 just because it made sense to me. I understand both of them. It became more difficult going 50-50 as the cryptos went crazy. But obviously holding metals when the cryptos crash is a brilliant move. And then you can, if you're really good, you'll swap back and forth. But of course, the problem with that is, one, there's taxes related to it. But number two, you do something like Snippy did with Theta. Sell way too early. Sell it $1 before it hit 15 or $2 or whatever he sold. And then how do you know when the peak is going to happen? Unless you're actually fomenting the peak, which the bankers do and the
Right.
criminals do. So, my take right now is the same take I've always had. The system is completely broken. There are good guys behind the scenes that will take down the entire system. The United States would be the winner because we have the largest debt on the planet, and you will be stuck with what you have in your own possession. And then we're going to have to figure out how we're going to move forward as a country. I believe we have a lot of gold and silver we can use as money. I think cryptos would be great use as money. I don't know if they'd be official money of the United States, but at least there's amazing technologies that can be released with cryptos.
Right.
So, my take now, try to stay 50-50, but at the end of the day, you're only going to end up with what you have in your own possession. So then everything starts again, and who knows what new exchanges will be started up? Will they be government run? Probably, or military run, really.
Right.
But they won't be run by the likes of J.P. Morgan. And I mean, Reggie Middleton invented an amazing way to have peer-to-peer transactions, peer-to-peer exchanges. Everybody and their mother in cryptos is violating Reggie's patent.
Yeah.
It's just so obvious, and yet nobody even bats an eye at it. So
Well, not yet. Not yet.
well, yeah, it would take the
Yeah.
U.S. government to come to Reggie and say, "Hey,
Right.
our
Right.
our system has been destroyed by the criminals that we handed the keys to. Can we use your technology to fix it? We granted you
Right.
the power of a patent over this technology for a reason. Let's
Right.
bring out back Very tokens and have him help us." So,
There are rays of sunshine in all of this, because if I put myself in the position of people watching the show and we're like, oh my God, guys, you're making this complicated. What do I do? What do I do? And then on top of that, there's run amok politicians that are creating legislation right, left, and center to tax the hell out of you. I think we're at 66% here of capital income tax in Canada with the new proposal. I think Biden is even suggesting an unrealized capital gains tax of 20 or 25% there in the States. I don't know if we'll be able to pass that, but it's just getting crazy. But on the other hand, we're seeing, and maybe you guys can educate the audience here, maybe 50% of the states already in the United States are in the process or have already through legislation made gold and silver legal tender. So that's interesting. So they seem to be seeing what's coming up around the corner. And I saw this earlier this week too. Let me see if I can bring this one back on the stage. It was Nebraska, I believe, that was banning. Let me see if I can bring this up here. Income tax on gold and silver. Yeah, so Nebraska ends income taxes on gold and silver and declares CBDCs are not lawful money. So there is some light at the end of the tunnel. It suggests that this fight is ongoing, or maybe better said, just about to start, or maybe to go hot. So, given some of this legislation confusion, like what are people to do with this too? Like, do they need to sit on the fence when they see these new proposals for government for a while? Do they go ahead? You're scratching your head, Biggs.
Yeah, I think the big one, Senator Mooney introduced a bill that would take away the 28% tax on federal income taxes. The states can do whatever they want.
Right.
The money you have to pay is federal. So it would take away the 28% tax on federal. Now the talk is of coins made by the U.S. Mint, and then it said or gold and silver bullion coins. The reality is, I think, because silver is needed elsewhere, it's going to be a monetary metal and industrial metal. It already is, but the reality of the laws that we will need to put in place going forward we'll go back to the Constitution, which allows gold and silver as money, right. But it also allows the government to tax on capital gains, supposedly. Now, right. You can't tax money. You can't tax the money as a capital gain, which is part of the Mooney bill. It says it makes no sense.
Right.
That you have taxes on the money of your country. So in his bill, it would remove the 28% tax from all U.S. Mint coins. So pre-65 coinage, silver eagles, anything denominated by the U.S. Mint. And I think that's part of what's going on at the U.S. Mint. I think they have been making silver and gold coins for a very long time and not telling people about it. So many Road to Ruta documents coming out of the Fed and all over. I have one that came out the same day as the Road to Ruta documents out of the Fed Boston on January 1st, 2007, with a little girl walking into a bank with 19 gold coins, swapping them for U.S. dollars. And that was written by the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston.
Right.
So this is not something new. This has been in the works since we went since the invention of the Fed in 1913. Mm-hmm. So it's just who's going to have to live through the end game. I think it's us.
Right. Okay, let's switch gears and talk politics a little bit. Let me bring up the economic advisor to Biden here, one of, anyways, Mr. Bernstein, and I say that in air quotes, economic advisors. I don't know if you guys have seen this. I played this the other day with Andy also. We were kind of falling off our chair laughing, but for the sake of this argument, this audience, let's just play this 1 minute clip. And then I also want to play the CNN interview of Biden here, where they were serving him some cold, hard truths about the economy and whether or not there was enough time for him to turn that ship around before the election. So we're going to play these two clips back to back here, and then we'll get back to the conversation.
The U.S. government can't go bankrupt because we can print our own money.
It obviously begs the question, why exactly are we borrowing in a currency that we print ourselves? I'm waiting for someone to stand up and say, why do we borrow our own currency in the first place?
Like you said, they print the dollar. So why does the government even borrow?
Well, again, some of this stuff gets, some of the language some of the language and concepts are just confusing. I mean, the government definitely prints money, and it definitely lends that money, which is why the government definitely prints money, and then it lends that money by selling bonds. Is that what they do?
Wait, I wasn't supposed to tell you that part out loud.
Sell bonds. Yeah, they sell bonds. right? Since they sell
Oh,
bonds,
yeah.
people buy the bonds and lend them the money. Yeah. So a lot of times, at least to my ear with MMT, the language and the concepts can be kind of unnecessarily confusing, but there is no question that the government prints money and then it uses that money to yeah, I guess I can't really talk. I don't get it. I don't know what they're talking about. Like, because it's like the government clearly prints money. It does it all the time, and it clearly borrows. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this debt and deficit conversation. So I don't think there's anything confusing there.
It's not confusing at all. It reminds me of maybe a Laurel and Hardy skit. I don't know. It's like who's on first and what's on second or whatever. It's kind of funny.
Yes.
Uh,
He definitely was not supposed to say that part out loud.
No, exactly, right? So let me ask you, you talked about woo-woo a little bit at the beginning of the show. Lisa, is this a contrived walk of shame? Is this the White
Sure
Hat
it is.
bring this guy out to make a fool of himself for people to wake up? Like,
Sure it is. It's the same thing that they're doing. They're putting people in different positions. There's a rumor that Obama had pardoned a lot of these folks during his time as president. And now they're being put in different positions and being dragged out. I mean, Gensler is a perfect example.
Yeah.
He wrote the checks for the for Clinton's foundation for the Russia hoax, and now he's being drug out in the street as the people's enemy and making innovation leave America in droves because of their, enforcement by litigation and not holding, Congress accountable to create the laws for and by we the people.
Right. So they're doing the walk of shame. Let's look at Biden here, whether or not he's doing the walk of shame or the walk of lame, or whether or not, as somebody was posting earlier today, it was the Indiana Jones switch, where they're going to put Newsom's head instead of Biden here just before the election. We'll get to that in a second, but let's play this clip from CNN. Benny Johnson here was posting, savage, CNN just aired the most brutal 2-minute takedown of Joe Biden's presidency during an interview with him. So let's play that again and have a little bit of a laugh with you guys.
So when you talk about the economy, of course, it is by far the most important issue for voters. It's also true right now, Mr. President, that voters by a wide margin trust Trump more on the economy. They say that in polls. And part of the reason for that may be the numbers. And you're aware of many of these, of course. The cost of buying a home in the United States is double what it was when you look at your monthly costs from before the pandemic. Real income, when you account for inflation, is actually down since you took office. Economic growth last week, far short of expectations. Consumer confidence, maybe no surprise, is near a 2-year low. With less than 6 months to go to election day, are you worried that you're running out of time to turn that around?
We've already turned it around. Look at the Michigan survey. Where 65% of American people think they're in good shape economically. They think the nation's not in good shape, but they're personally in good shape. The polling data has been wrong all along. How many of you guys do a poll with CNN? How many folks you have to call to get one response? The idea that we're in a situation where things are so bad. Folks, we've created more jobs. We're in a situation where people have access to good paying jobs. And the last I saw, a combination of the inflation, the cost of inflation, all those things, that's really worrisome to people. With good reason. That's why I'm working very hard to bring the cost of rentals down, to increase the number of homes that are available. Let me say it this way. When I started this administration, people were saying there's going to be a collapse in the economy. We have the strongest economy in the world. Let me say it again, in the world.
Although GDP last week was far short of expectations.
Oh, listen, look, GDP is still, look at the response of the markets. Overwhelmingly positive. Overwhelmingly positive. And one of the reasons why people feel good about it, not being as strong as it was before, is they believe that the Fed's going to respond.
They hope they're going to get a rate cut.
Yeah. Well, but no president's had the run we've had in terms of creating jobs and bringing down inflation. It was 9% when I came to office. 9%. But look, people have a right to be concerned. Ordinary people, the idea that you bounce a check and you get a $30 fee for bouncing a check, I changed that. You can't charge more than $8 for that. Or your credit card, your late payment, $35. I mean, there's corporate greed going on, and it's got to be dealt with.
Okay, so all of the problems in the States have to do with corporate greed and or faulty surveys. So says Mr. Biden. Your first reactions there, Biggs.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, which version of Joe Biden is this?
Right. It's the Balchinian version.
I just heard today that I don't think there's going to be election debates. I don't think there'll be any presidential debates. I heard today that the DNC is thinking of canceling their convention, and I'm like,
wow,
because they can't. How are they going to trot that guy out? I mean, what he can't even walk him by himself anymore if that is him. So yeah, our country's screwed, and I've been screaming we're not going to get to the election before something drastic happens.
Let's bring into context more politics here and Mr. Trump. Last week, I entitled the show here today, the Crypto Roundtable, Trump Knows. It appears that, again, we're about to switch gears in the financial systems, as Lisa was saying at the beginning of the show, and so many other researchers are suggesting that if we're going to do this and the White Hats have a chance at making this right, the economic system has to crash under Biden here. So as Lisa was saying at the beginning of the show, we're running out of time for that to happen in earnest. Like it is, I guess, in reality, but we're not being shown that. If you look at all of these crazy triple adjustments and seasonal adjustment numbers from the Bureau of Lying Statistics. So let's go to Trump this week. So I thought it was interesting. On one hand, we had all these banks report their spot holdings in Bitcoin ETF. And on the other hand, we had Trump saying, hey, he's going to accept a Bitcoin here and crypto for campaign donations. So that was kind of like the first shot across the bow where he was talking about it, at least for the normies. We saw that he had 80,000 people at a rally in New Jersey just a couple of days ago, again, too, completely against what mainstream news is telling us about this absolute criminal here on the screen being sued right, left, and center by the deep state. Also said amid Biden and Gensler jihad on digital asset, Trump says that if you like crypto, you better vote for him. And what was interesting, he was saying here too that this could be the first real election that talks about cryptocurrencies. Where are we on that? Are you thinking, let me start with you, Lisa, is Trump playing into this spot ETF manipulation of Bitcoin somehow to accelerate things here in order to get to the crash, in order to get to the other side? Is he doing a move that some people might say is similar to what he did with Operation Warp Speed? Still, some people are angry at him for that, where he accelerated the, we'll just say the injections for now that might have harmed some people in order to accelerate the process and eventually save more lives in this particular war. Is he doing the same thing here with Bitcoin, or is he announcing here that there's a fight coming and that he's leaning perhaps towards more of the decentralized crypto as opposed to the Gary Gensler and the Biden CBDC policy plank here that is being presented to us? How do you break this down for the audience, Lisa?
Well, I think that he's definitely, and when I say him, I think it's a group of people and he is the face or representation of that. But we'll see how that all plays out. I think that previously, he had said he wasn't a fan of crypto or Bitcoin, but he never said no. But he's also done that different times. And I think that's the same thing with the jab and all that, was that because there is this, Trump derangement syndrome and all this. If he says he's for something, it automatically causes that to be attacked. And so I think back when he said he wasn't a fan, it was to let other people that are the people that should be standing up for Bitcoin do that education or have that opportunity to educate and not just have this hard stop. So for him to now say, I'm in it, I accept it. To me, what I heard when the guy with the goggles asked him about crypto or what he's going to do about crypto, he focused on the threats against crypto and the hostility, I think he called it, I think was the word that he, and so I think he's trying to bring a focus to this corruption that is those 3-letter agencies that are being hostile to, like I said, the innovation that can be brought.
Yeah, he talked about the threat, but he also suggested that he would be a president that would not stifle crypto innovation and would hope that all of these investments
That
might
it would
not
help.
flee to other competitive countries, that we could
Right.
foster that here within North America. Okay, and where do you stand on this whole idea of an election thing? Do we get there in the fall, or
I've been saying for a very long time it's not going to even happen. We're never going to get there.
Right.
But I believe Trump is the commander in chief. And so I don't know legally if that it considers or is considered a second term. So then he wouldn't even be able to serve after. I also think that if there's a breaking apart of what happened, I think it was 1880 or 81. When they say military is the only way, I think they're talking about not only, I think that changes our laws because we're talking about military justice or tribunals. It changes, the military could protect or oversee elections, and they're not supposed to be political or whatever. So there was an army or a military here before the establishment of this Fed system and this federal, and basically, like, they're in violation or breach of contract with the US Constitution with us. We made an agreement with the federal government through the US Constitution to put things in place to hold powers back, and they violated that over and over. And so if we go into some national divorce, um, there is a way that the military, because they are beholden to we the people, could help see us through this.
Right. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Biggs, go ahead.
Who would we be divorcing?
The Fed, the
Okay.
big government systems.
Or the states would be divorcing the federal
Which
government.
means we would just defund the states, and the states, if they're representing we the people, the counties, level, could be divorcing the powers that be, and you stop funding them. If they say, well, if you don't do this, we're not going to send you any funding, that's fine. That kind of stuff's been happening in Oklahoma. They're pushing back on Governor Stitt because he was refusing Fed dollars to feed children. Well, of course, then he looks like the big bad guy, but the Cherokee Nation has half of Oklahoma, which has been reinstated to them, and they have said they will make sure every child is fed in the state of Oklahoma. And I think more and more things like that are going to start happening. People can't, they're so, well, I pay my taxes, so I need the Fed to fix all these things in my neighborhood, where we should be fixing these things and more locally, on a local level. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing.
You're talking about a drive towards decentralization here and more local governance. Okay. Biggs, going back to this idea, what's Trump's strategy in all of this? It seemed odd to me in the timing that we would have all of these ETF disclosures, and that we'd have the IMF come out also and say that, brace yourself here for the death of the petrodollar. And at the same time, Trump all of a sudden is popping off here on crypto. What do you think the game plan is there?
Well, going back to that Bernstein discussion on how money is created, he didn't even have that right. I mean, he didn't get right how the Fed and the U.S. government create money, but the real money is created at the banking level. Money is loaned into existence. Yeah, the U.S. government and the Fed create some amount of it, but the real money is created at the banking level. You give a bank $1 million and they lend out $9 million on that $1 million. That's where the real money is created. It's not at the Fed, just a little bit of it. And then you got the derivative side of it. We have unlimited derivatives that we can throw at anything. I remember when Greenspan said that we can never default on on the US dollar. That's impossible because we do have the ability to create it out of thin air. So do banks. What we can do is lose 100% of the purchasing power of that, the faith and confidence. All that stuff is time. And that's what I didn't like about Trump being in there for 4 years. Didn't solve the number one problem in America, is the market rigging and the continuation of the banking system.
Right.
That can be solved in a blink of an eye. Just
a click of a mouse, Bix. A click of a mouse.
Yes, exactly. Allow the banks to fail on the derivative book, and it takes out everything. That's why it was allowed to get so big. $2 quadrillion. When that goes, everything's gone. There's no saving it. There's no amount of money that can be created. It would destroy the banks, the savings and loans, everything. It would be painful. It would be deadly. but it literally is the only way, because now is a lot worse than it was 20 years ago. And 20 years before that, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Somebody's got to pull the plug on this shit. I had hoped Trump would do it. Closest he came was about to take down J.P. Morgan. But then he let him go. He had him dead to rights on RICO charges. That would have taken down whatever their 60 trillion in derivatives, which had taken down everybody else. So, I love Trump for what he's done. I don't love Trump for being, he was the biggest rigger of all of them. He says he did it for a purpose, but what is that purpose? Here we are, 4 years later, and nothing has changed.
Inflation's through the roof, and they're sending money to Ukraine, which is inflating the dollar away even more.
It was during Trump, inflation was through the roof. He just lied about it.
It's making our debt. We're going to be able to walk away from our debt or leave the Fed holding the debt. And then the state level, where the state treasuries have been during the Great Infection, backing their state treasuries with gold and silver, then we will be able to transition to a state, or I guess it's state or community-based metal.
What state backed their currency with gold and silver? Their currency is the U.S.
Oklahoma,
dollar.
Texas.
It's backed
Arkansas.
U.S. dollar. It's backed by gold and silver. Where is it?
Yes, there's a lot of backed by. They were filling up the treasuries with gold and silver specifically.
In those states, you can go in there with the U.S. dollar and say, "I want my backing for this U.S. dollar." That doesn't make any sense.
No, because that's a Fed dollar. It's not a state dollar. So I'm talking about to the state treasury, not the Fed treasury.
State dollars. There's no backing.
Not yet.
Yeah, that's the thing. What I think Lisa is saying is that there seems to be the groundwork towards decentralization. On one hand, these states making gold and silver legal tender, presumably to use it either to back something that they're going to put in place, or to use that temporarily until the country puts their shit together and has this new currency that we can all agree on. I don't know.
That's against the Constitution. We got to go back to only the U.S. Mint can coin money of the United States of America, and it's got to be gold and silver. Are the states going to break the Constitution? Then why believe in anything?
Well, maybe the gold and silver that they're backing their state treasury with will be used through the mint that is constitutional to create those new state dollars.
It's a circular argument. You go round and round. Yeah, they're investing in gold and silver. Not silver, gold. I don't know any state that's invested in silver. Is there any?
I don't know. I'd have to
do my research. There are no states. There's states that probably put some of their investment money that states do have invest into gold. Yeah, but they look at it as investment. They're not looking at it as, we're going to flip that over and use that as a currency inside of our state. I have seen no proof of that at all.
We're in for some weird stuff. I don't know if you guys saw the movie The Civil War. It just came out like last month. If you watch it, I did a decode with Janine on it a couple of weeks ago. It appears that the Civil War, although they don't say it in the movie, is a result of this economic collapse. And at one point, the media who are trying to get to DC to interview the president before he gets killed are looking to buy gas, and the gas station attendants, they don't want US dollars, they're looking for Canadian dollars. I'm like, in what weird world is the Canadian dollar worth more than the US? I thought that was absolutely funny. But they're kind of suggesting here that the dollar had collapsed somehow, but they don't really get into it. I thought it was funny. In terms of this disassociation from the Fed or the decentralization concept, we're seeing that here in Canada also. On one hand, we have Alberta who's trying to get out from underneath the Canadian pension plan. They want to get their money back. They don't want the Feds to manage it. And we're seeing also in Saskatchewan now, one of the premiers basically said FU to our prime minister, saying that, hey, in that province, they're not going to be collecting this new carbon tax, right? So now the federal government is after them with all this other legal stuff here. But there's a fight already brewing here in Canada too, similar to what you guys are seeing in the States. While we're talking about the politics of it all and this changeover, I want to have your take on this. I saw last week, I think, or maybe 2 weeks ago, this movie, Napoleon. I don't know if you guys saw it, but what was interesting, we're talking about basically the death of the monarchy here. We see the guillotines being used at the beginning of the show. The population is basically in a state of kind of where we are at right now, astrologically speaking, also where there's an echo in time to the situation we find ourselves in now. But here, they get rid of the monarchy and presumably to have a better system afterwards. And what I thought was well done here by the producer, Ridley Scott, um, he put some emphasis on this transition period. So it's not because they got rid of the monarchy or that the guillotine a few thousand people here who were in charge of the government at the time that things were automatically better. Much to the contrary, I think the term he used, I'm trying to remember from French books, but in English he said the years of terror after the monarchy had failed. So this was a succession of different governments trying to form and get consensus and to have the acceptance from the population. And I thought, oh, fuck, this might also be what Cliff High was saying, what Jim Sinclair, what Bix was saying about these many resets that we might be living here once we get through that first gate here of the reality of our Ponzi scheme. Where do you see that today? Do you see many resets, Bix? Do you see once this is done that we quickly go to systems like Reggie Middleton's innovation, or do we see years of like confusion and maybe even terror as different groups are trying to reconstitute some type of governance system here in North America? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I wish I had an answer. We have never experienced what we're about to experience, the collapse of a global unbacked fiat monetary system. It's never happened before. You know, there's been little pockets like Germany and Weimar and little pockets like that, but we've never been in a mass delusional global unbacked fiat monetary system run by printing money out of thin air, not printing it, electronic blips, and a derivative bubble that is beyond anything anybody can conceive. We've never been through this. So anybody who says, "Oh yeah, this is how it's going to happen," or you know, I've been heard so many times, Nestra, Gestra, XRP, you name it, they're going to fix the system, the freedom funds, blah 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 blah. At the end of the day, none of them will be accepted because there'll be nobody in authority. When literally when the banking system fails finally, and it will at some point, mathematically, it's going to fail. No one will have the authority. We're not going to turn to the Fed. We're not going to turn to the little munchkin Janet Yellen. We're gonna say, okay, what do we have? What's in our possession? What's our local community doing? And it's not going to be pretty. This has never happened before in the history of humanity, and it's about to happen. And people have underestimated this thing. Oh, we can fix it with the Gestra, Nestra, and it's just all bullshit. And those have come and gone. The Iraqi dinar, XRP is the latest joke. I mean, those guys have made $30 billion selling those little XRP tokens, saying it's going to take over SWIFT. It's so ridiculous. You think the Fed would ever allow something like XRP to take over SWIFT with a simple little program bought by a bunch of crypto people? No, never, not a chance. So I've lived through so many of the solutions, and the reality is nobody knows the solution, and we're not going to know it until we live through it. And then
another reason when you say if you don't hold it and you don't own it, and during this period of time, you're going to need to find stuff that is in your own possession here in order to navigate all of this stuff. Lisa, on this idea of many resets or this years of terror, I think it was called in the Napoleon movie after this switchover, you mentioned that the economy had to fail under Biden here before the election. We're close to this kickoff period. I think Cliff High was looking at his data too, saying it would be a hot summer. So there's a lot of weird things happening this summer, including the Elohim front, but we could leave that part up for now. But in terms of the economy switching over and us having to reboot, like, what are your thoughts? I know you're maybe more glass full than Bix.
I am more glass full, but I would be calling Bix and if I could reach him and probably in a panic asking his advice. And so I have a lot of respect for his opinions on that. But I do think the collapse is part of the education. One of the things that we missed out on when crypto, first was going out to we the people. And I think that's why there's such a push to stop it, is because with education about cryptocurrency, and because one of my first things, so the reason I'm like Coin Lisa is because my mother, Crypto Nana for LTC, gave my husband and I Litecoin for our wedding in 2017. And I was so confused. I said, but why? And that's the part that wakes people up. And that's one of the most powerful use cases of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is why? Because we have been raised, indoctrinated through government schools and all of that, shoved down our throat. Google, memorization, read, wrote, memorization, and Google Vomit was the way education systems wanted it to be, so that we'd be good little slaves, and that we would put our energy into a third party's custody, which is dirty fiat.
Right.
And then they would be able to control us all, and we would get up and work good and just hope for our weekends off and be good little slaves. And once you hear why cryptocurrency? Well, because the Federal Reserve isn't federal and there's no reserves. And that just takes you right down the rabbit hole. You see my little Alice in Wonderland doll over here. The education and the enlightenment, the awareness that, I am free. And it's my energy. It's my IP. You're starting to see conversations where they're having these arguments about the singers, getting their whole books taken, their name, image, and likeness. We're going to start understanding. It's going to get real painful, because we're going to start understanding that we've been giving away our data, our name, image, and likeness for they to profit off of for all these years. And we're going to start understanding that and stop valuing the dollar, because we're going to understand that we are the value. We have the energy.
Well, I think when you say the why in this great awakening process, you said why crypto or why Litecoin,
Yeah.
like you said with your story. If you look at the opposite direction too, what I'm seeing is more and more people are waking up to, why do we need a middleman, right? So going back to Reggie Middleton, the disintermediation, this to me is a big awakening. And I think this is what's scaring the powers that be. In the descending ages of the Yugas, we had all these systems in place and all of these middlemen and all of these parasites. But now that we're just crossing into the higher realm of this galactic plate we're on, we're getting these new emanations of light. We're getting stronger and starting to ask, well, why do we need those guys again?
Right.
And of course, with the technology, we can go peer to peer. That's the beauty of it all. So the education, as you're saying, Lisa, is absolutely important. Let me go into, because we talked about education and we talked about this Bernstein who had absolutely no money, no idea on how money is created. I watched this the first time, I believe it was 2015 or so, The Hidden Secrets of Money. There's a beautiful series, and there's an animation there about how money is created in the States. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. I'll bring the link down on the YouTube feed and on the Rumble feed for you guys here also. And now I want to get into the gold market. There was a couple of news items this week too that piqued my interest. Let me go back here. This one here. So why we're at the start of a bull market, multi-year bull market in metals, but in golds. Frank Giustra was out last week saying also we're just at the beginning here of this third leg of the bull market in gold. So we're expecting crazy things there. This was interesting the other day on May 10th, 2024. I brought this back here because there's a possibility here also that some of these central banks gold buying are still unreported. So this I thought was interesting because on one hand, they've been the biggest buyer of gold here. I think this last quarter was bigger than all of last year put together. There's different stats on that, but Andy was on the show the other day suggesting that somebody knows and is front running here what's about to happen. And we're seeing the big players here get physical in a big way. So I thought that was interesting. And finally, as the dollar falters, of course, gold becomes insurance, not speculation. So let's talk about gold and silver moving out. Let me ask you first, Bix, there was a question in the chat. Somebody was asking about silver specifically. Robbie, JC, please ask Bix what he thinks is best in silver, Eagles and 90%. So as I was saying at the beginning of the show, there's a lot of new people in here that are trying to navigate. They understand at least that they have to extricate from the old system, but they're not sure necessarily how to jump into the new system, how to on-ramp here. So can you guide us through this a little bit here, Bix?
Well, first, it depends where you live. Remember that the Eagles and the pre-65 coinage is the U.S. based. If you're buying those because there's a few reasons to buy it. Number one, they are covered by the anti-counterfeiting laws as well as the fraud laws. So there's going to be a lot of people buying fake silver in the 100-ounce bars they thought they got really cheap and things like that because they're easy to fake. So there's stronger laws, but what I was buying them for was the taxation issue. For the U.S. Constitution to say, hey, this is your money, and then the government to say, well, your money changed in value, and the Mooney bill points it out very specifically. How are you going to tax people saying this is your money, and oh, by the way, your money is getting more and more valuable over time? It's like, wait a minute, what's the underlying thing you're measuring it? You're measuring my money against Federal Reserve notes.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you tax, how is it constitutionally legal to tax people on the change in purchasing power of your money, the constitutional money? So that is
How is it constitutionally legal to tax at all?
not money.
It's not. Yeah.
I know. And that the reality for me now is because we see these gigantic premiums also at times, like Eagles had like a 70%, 80% premium, and it was insane. So I was like, no, don't buy them now. Whatever you do, don't buy them now. And the U.S. Mint, I have done quite a bit of work on pointing out they are completely breaking the law. They are required by law to make as many Eagles as meet public demand. It's very clear in the law. They did change the law to try to get around it a little bit by saying Janet Yellen gets to decide. But at the same time, they didn't change the law. She has to decide truthfully and honestly whether or not they're meeting demand. Everybody knows they're not meeting demand. So it'll be interesting. That's why I love pre-65 coinage. It's also easier to spend theoretically, and there's a few reasons. But if you live in a different country, obviously you don't want to buy pre-65 coinage when you live in Canada because it's not the Canadian money.
Right.
I'd look at the maple leaf and things like that. If you think the government is going to say, okay, there really are two different kinds of silver. There's a monetary silver and an industrial silver. If we want to move forward as society, we have to use the industrial silver. We can't have everybody trying to buy the investment type of silver.
Right.
And that's one of the big things that the banks have literally rigged the price for, is to keep you away from that.
Right. Great answer. Thank you, Bix. Appreciate that. Guys, if you're looking at getting some constitutional silver here in the States, you can do so at beyondmystic.net/silver. We have the 65, pre-65 dimes and quarters here on sale at $275 over spot. If you're looking at some Canadian coins also, we have the 10th ounce of gold here at $29 over melt. And Andy has these silver Krugerrands, the 1 ounce South African coins here. These are the 2023 print at $310 over spot. So beyondmystic.net/silver. You're good on silver and how it might be used strategically. Lisa, maybe 8 or 9 months ago, you had reported that we're seeing these new, basically ATM machine for coinage.
Years ago.
Bix was no, I meant on the show here. We
okay.
And Bix was also on the hunt about this particular notch in some of the silver, whether or not they would be putting this microprint in there that could be tokenized somehow, or we'll get to that for security, maybe also Bix in a sec. But what's your view on silver and maybe trying to be the first in line for this new silver that the Mint is creating but is not selling yet? Like, are you seeing that maybe across the horizon anytime soon?
I'm having computer difficulty, so I apologize. It keeps making that noise. I have my personal beliefs about that, the things that I've seen and the people that I know that are involved. I have a friend that is on the board for creating the new CBDC for the Fed. This was years ago. During the Great Infection, these ITMs were being put in all over the country. You can Google ITM and see there's a place for checks, which could be a form from the government. I have thoughts about that as well. And they have coin machines. And you're also seeing coin machines being put into Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's. If you go to the self-checkouts, you'll find that there are coin machines. Well, I've used ATMs for many, many years, and the only thing I've ever got out of them was a $20 bill. Why in the world would I start needing to put in or receive change or tokens? On these ITMs, there's also a pad to sign, signature pad. There's a place to scan an ID. And so we could be changing our whole identification system as well. And I don't know if that'll be triggered by what we're seeing with the immigrants or whatever, the migration of humans. Oklahoma's taking some really strong steps. They were passing a bill to denounce or writing. Maybe there was 22 different senators now that I think about it. there was the letter that just denounced the WHO and the WEF. Maybe those are two separate things. There was one statement in Oklahoma where they were saying, we don't acknowledge the WHO or the WEF here. But then there's another thing at a federal level where you're seeing several senators stand up and push back on them. And so I think that push away from centralized global elite, big government controls is what's going to trigger people finding those solutions. And I think it's going to be, I don't know, like Bix says, I lean to him on a lot of this with gold and silver, of course. And he says silver will be too valuable to use that as an exchange. Well, I also noticed recently they started locking up copper. If you go to your local Home Depot and Lowe's, you'll notice that the copper coin or the copper cords are like on lockdown. Is that because they know what's coming? They know that maybe they're going to use that for money, or is that going to be used for technology, and we'll see the value of that go up as well. I have a lot more questions than I have answers, but I'm always listening and digging. And
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Bix, just last note on the notches on the dollar. Are you getting any more information as to what that might be, or speculation?
Yeah, I know what it is. Guy David Ryder was the head of the mint in the 90s. Trump brought him back in. He in the meantime, he worked for Honeywell for a division that was creating scanners that will scan the crystalline structure of a coin. Every coin, if you get down to the microscopic level, it's got a structure that you can record that structure and attach like a code to, or something you want to. Every single coin is different on that level. So Honeywell invented a way to position a coin. The notch would be a positioning thing under a scanner. It would take a scan of the coin when it leaves the mint, and then it will always have an identifier attached to that coin, so it's the real thing. And they can't scratch off anything. It will be there, that identifier. And David Ryder implemented that, and he was 100% behind it. I talked to the head of Silver Eagle sales. He said this was David Ryder's doing. Nobody knew why he was changing it. It was David Ryder. But if you go back and find David Ryder, he works for Honeywell implementing these. Honeywell has like US dollar scanners. That's what they do. That's their job. So that was the idea, to implement that as the new monetary system moves forward, which is a great idea. And it would really be an identifier of what silver was made by the US Mint and what was just, fake silver.
Right.
You'll see a lot of fake Silver Eagles these days. And
So either way, we're looking in a new world where most of the population will understand the true meaning and the value of precious metals. Like, the old world is falling apart, and we're going to have to change our views and be flexible enough to navigate. Oh, poor Lisa, I think she lost her camera feed there.
he was tired of us.
She's tired of us, yeah. Tired of the Bix and JC. How can that be? Guys, on a quick note here too, Meg, our astrologer, gave me a note here earlier today. She said this is the luckiest week here of the year. So there's two major alignments here on May 13th and May 18th. You guys can take a snapshot of that, and somewhat enforcing or expanding the value here of both cryptos and also gold and silver. And I thought that was interesting because at the same time that she was sending me that, Bill Holter was also sending me information here saying that the next 2 weeks could be critical here for gold and silver. So again, stay tuned for this show. If you haven't already seen it here on our schedule page, this is going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern, May 14th. So tomorrow, you guys don't want to miss that. And if you want to have a personal reading with Meg and look at your astrology for the year and perhaps get some insights on how to best navigate also your finances, you can do so here at consultations.beyondmystic.net. There, if you use the coupon code BeyondMystic in one word, you'll get 10% off of these astrological readings here with Meg. Before we go, let me start with you, Lisa. Anything coming up on Litecoin Lisa? New interviews, or getting cool new people on the show anytime soon? What's
I do a weekday show, and I kind of stick with that. We did just add I Am for I Am on Mondays, and he is diving into what is an agorist and why agorism. Currently, that's what we're talking about. We are going to start engaging, or the plan is to use den.social, and I have a mighty layer there. You can join for free and be part of the layer, and then you can be able to ask us questions that
Dim
we were in.
Social. Oh my God, I have those
In
somewhere
social, and yeah,
in
the
the old
dragon.
wallet somewhere. I have those. I don't know.
Yeah, Dracaria is launching soon. The dragon
Cool.
eggs, all of that stuff. So that's kind of exciting stuff.
Oh, cool.
Another really fun thing I do is on Thursday mornings, I get to be part of World Blockchain Roundtable on Dragon Chain and talk with some really amazing, smart guys. I want to just touch on one thing that Bix brought up
Sure.
that the ITMs play into. The ITMs could easily scan that flat spot, and then and then we could have a true Fort Knox where community or local banks, if that information was then put on a distributed ledger, then you could have your app and you could spend fractions of your silver and gold coins, and it would be in a protected place with a open ledger that there couldn't be rehypothecation, because that specific crystalline structure was on can only we don't have the double spend. That's how the Bitcoin solves it all. So that's kind of my mindset of all that. If you guys want to see that video, I went and interviewed someone at my local bank about the ITM, and he shows me the ITM, and then he takes me down a green hallway which looks like Wizard of Oz, and goes, oh well, here's where you get the large, and you can dump your huge amounts of coin in, and that machine scans and sorts and catalogs that into your account, or you can receive large amounts of coin in rolls in another machine, all from your account after you sign and be identified.
Crazy sci-fi world we're entering to. Thank you, Lisa, for that. How can we support you here at Litecoin Lisa? If we become a member here, what do we get in exchange?
I would love for you to join me on Patreon. So that's where people can private message me, and we have more of a personal exchange. Occasionally we'll do a live with the Patreon group if they request that. But basically that's just like my go-to communication. You can also go to litecoinlisa.net and reach out to me there if you are interested in having me for a speaking event about freedom, crypto, parenting kiddos from medically fragile or difficult situations, adoption, foster care stuff as well. I'm very passionate about.
Very good. Litecoinlisa.net, you said?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And also here, patreon.com/LitecoinLisa. Thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. And Bix, what's coming up here on Road to Ruta? Any new interviews or also new backstage stuff here with what's her name again? Jenny Moonstone. I was going to say Moonbeam. No, Jenny Moonstone. I was going to say, yes, she changed her name recently. And then when she was on my last show, I kept having trouble reminding her what was the real name. So yes, Jenny Constantine is what I was looking for. What's coming up here on roadtoruta.com and the private road, and how can people support you there, Bix?
Well, still doing the same thing, trying to expose all the fake numbers that our government puts out. Silver was the big one. The Silver Institute released their numbers, and go to Road to Ruta YouTube channel. Make sure you watch those. I post those almost daily. And then at roadtoruta.com, we have a little place you can put your email in that you get free updates. And then the private road at Road to Ruta, behind the scenes stuff. Once or twice a week, I'll post a private road video talking about things I can't talk about on YouTube. And by the way, I'm like one of the last freedom fighters left on YouTube. I'm very proud of that. And I've been dangling around.
With your original subscribers intact, you mean?
Yes. Exactly. Well, they take away every once in a while. I don't know why I bother, but I do. I think I'd rather fight for the platform. It was a great platform. You know, I know how it got. I know the guy who actually got the patent for YouTube originally, Mark Collins-Reptor, who was a huge deep state pedo guy, going back into the 90s. So yeah, a lot of good stuff over there. Go check it out.
Ah, cool. Thank you so much, Bix, and thank you so much, Lisa, for joining me today and sharing your knowledge and your information and all of your research with the audience members. I think these are the times where we need to get together, share notes, and try to better understand and navigate our crazy world. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today on the live show. You guys are amazing. Please give us a thumbs up if you like the video, and join me tonight for the Beyond the News edition here on pay-per-view on beyondmystic.net. We're going to be looking into more of these weird sky events. that are happening and that might be just around the corner also. And if you haven't seen it already and you want to participate in the Chemtrail Awareness Month, go to Cliff High's Twitter and submit your photos there so that you can win. I think it's a gold coin. He's got 2 or 1 gold coins. Bix, do you remember? He's giving away some silver and gold, I think.
Uncle Cliff's giving away 3 gold coins for the chemtrail challenge.
Right.
One's for the most liked, most retweeted, and then a video one, I believe. I think that's right.
So check it out on Cliff High's Twitter. I love you guys. This was the Crypto Roundtable. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Au revoir.
Au revoir.